We get the build-up of rules and practices. And this forms a very satisfying view of life. So in a way, I don't see humanism as something that discards something, say God in this case, but as a view of life that is a whole, that explains why we come about to have these social abilities that we have, that warns us by looking back in history of what can happen, that says we must learn because things change. For example, looking at how we get the build-up of religions, a very natural view, say 3,000 years ago, is that events are caused by some agent. Abortion. Now, if they're going to say that, if they're going to argue that in the public space, they're going to have to argue it on a basis which is relevant to other people's considerations, to a much wider consideration than the fertilized ovum is a human being at the moment of fertilization. So it's just that people are going to be informed by their religious background, by their religious teachings and their attitudes. But the arguments that are used will be such that in open discussion are going to be contested. I don't think you can stop religion impinging in that way.
So you mean you don't mind the Catholics discussing it in the public space, what you don't want is them adducing purely religious arguments which are purely their own. They should be using more general arguments.
They could advance them, but I doubt. They'd be well advised to have other arguments as well. It's the breadth of the basis on which you're going to argue that is relevant. If you're going to just say one thing, that leads to a direct confrontation, because the argument that you have a complete human being is something that does not resonate with anyone else. And it's not a very wise way to be arguing in a democratic society when you're trying to use an argument that doesn't mean anything to people, except insofar as you would have a feeling for the hurt that it would be caused to the person advancing it, which is a different matter. In all areas one tries to accommodate and not to unnecessarily have a confrontation. But what I'm getting at is you cannot keep religion out of the public arena in terms of how people approach a question. But perhaps more explicitly, to have a backdoor influence on government that is not part of the public discussion, like the access that the Archbishop has to the Prime Minister, that you may not know about. The Archbishop can go in and say, look, I don't think this is a good idea, and we would oppose it, and the Prime Minister says, oh, we don't want to. We don't want to have a row with the Church of England, though, of course, on social matters, they're getting more and more into this position. But we ought to know about what's going on in society.